Why did you create Seismic Foundry?
The global financial crisis impacted everyone in different ways, but one of the things that happened here in the UK is that the government and the Bank of England and the regulators came together and said, we want to be a leader in innovation globally, and here are the things that we want to be a leader in. We want to be cybersecurity, innovation in financial markets across a range of things from payments to execution, clearing and settlement. With all the regulatory changes that were happening through MiFID II and EMIR, etc., post-GFC, there was huge opportunities here. So they brought in a regime that would allow people to invest their own money up to £1 million per year in startups that were categorized as SEIS or EIS, enterprise investment scheme or startup enterprise, seed enterprise investment scheme. And you could get immediately a 50% tax credit back. And then there was a whole raft of other programs that were developed that helped founders and investors, as well as the employees and those working there, get really great tax breaks or credits. And so the whole ecosystem really took off. And then the government and the bank and the regulator decided to open up the real-time payment system, RTGS, outside of the 13 banks that were on that to anybody who wanted to offer faster payments. And it absolutely revolutionised payments globally. So we've got Revolut came out of that, TransferWise, now called Wise. Payments now are not the same as they were back then as a result of that move, and it's really superpowered the fintech ecosystem. And what we were seeing is in capital markets, that plus all the regulatory requirements to change, where there was lots of new financial technology coming through to solve for things, but they were struggling to get into the big banks. They were struggling to sell in. There was just so much infrastructure and bureaucracy preventing it, that there was things we could do to enable our peers and ourselves to invest in this stuff. Because if you're sitting inside the banks, you're not allowed to invest in these. You can't have an ownership stake. But if we set it up as a fund, because it was discretionary on our behalf, people could have a stake in this early stage unlisted private market that was really servicing our ecosystem that we knew really well. So 4 of us set it up: Brendan Bradley, Bill Templar, Jeff Gale and myself. And I think nobody had done a tiny capital markets SEIS fund at that point in time.
Why did you decide to start Wild in London?
Jessica started Wild in America, and we were at Boca the first year she had come up with the idea. And she gathered a few women in futures markets together, but there were mostly people from the US, and they all went out for dinner. And then we were all at the bar later, and they all came back in all happy, and they were talking about, we're going to set up Wild. And so I was at the bar with Emma Davey and a couple of others, and we were excitedly talking, and I said to Jessica, well, we have to have Wild London. We can't, because futures are all over the world. Because of Wild, the US, and the work that she'd done there, we established Wild London, and we got some really great sponsorship. So I pulled together a team, Emma and I. I hosted a launch event at the London Capital Club, which was a private members club here at the time, and got all the women we knew in the markets together in one room with some champagne and some canapes, and a plan to grow this into something meaningful, because we were seeing a dearth of women making it up to those global roles as head of futures in the markets. It was all men, and there was really good women in markets, but we're also seeing that the big banks tended not to go to the futures and derivatives arm to pull people through into other promotional roles elsewhere in the bank. It was just forgotten. And we, for those of us who've worked in this industry all our lives, we get risk better than anybody else, right? We're across every time zone, every regulatory jurisdiction, every single asset class, every currency you can imagine, nearly 24 hours a day. Nobody gets risk better than we do. And it was just bemusing. So we started doing events, and we got them sponsored, and we had Wild merch. We would get really great speakers in, and we were focused on things, everything from those younger women coming through, where we would nurture them and show them how to negotiate, for instance, when it was pay review time. We did matching of mentors and mentees, so almost like a speed dating thing. Everyone had to talk to each other for 90 seconds, and then we'd match mentees and mentors together and ran programs. We sponsored awards. It was a really fantastic, rewarding part of being in markets here. When I left, I was the, inaugural chair. We ran it it was a committee of all of us, right? We built a board of 8 initially, and there were some great people who got involved in that. When I went back to Australia, it was such a big part of my markets life. I looked to try and set it up down there, but it's a much smaller market down there, and we're much more spread out geographically in Southeast Asia. So I've never quite had the chance to make it happen.
Who sponsored Wild?
Naturally, we went to the companies we worked for. When that all happened, that was CBOT CME for me, and then ICAP, BM&F Bavespa, so all the way through all the companies I was with would support, as did FOW and FIA, LME when Emma was there. And as we brought in board members from different companies, my time at Curve Global, London Stock Exchange was a sponsor. There was also a very strong lens in the city back then in trying to improve diversity all the way through organisations, especially at the top level, and then onto boards. So for me, having had the very good luck of making it onto a bank board, I realised there was a lot of luck involved in that as well. Right person at the right time. It wasn't a very easy avenue for many people. So we're working at all levels to try and raise the profile of women. And we collaborated with quite a few groups to make sure we could feed through really experienced people and maybe help them with their speaking skills, that they could be appearing on panels and be keynote speakers on their subject matter expertise. So it was... As a result, we were seen to be very professional, and so more companies were coming to us then. So we had the ISVs, the banks, the brokers, all the exchanges. We had a really strong cohort of sponsors.
How did Futures for Kids come together?
There was a whole group of us that have all been friends in markets for a long time, and Bill had wanted to do something that gave back. And we were all at a bar down by the river one afternoon, evening, and he was talking about it. And I said, well, in Australia, we would run a futures ball every year when the floor was open, right? And we'd pick a charity each year and try and raise as much money as possible. And for the smaller charities, it could be a really significant amount, right? Sometimes $100,000. That meant the futures market could pay it forward somehow. But we didn't have any mechanism for that now. Now the floors were gone. There was none of those kind of events. And so companies would do their own thing, but there was never a collective way futures people could put in so that everyone could be part of it. And so he came up with the idea of Futures for Kids and approached a group of us. And I'd gone back down to Australia for the holidays. I think when I came back, it was all ta-da. He got the group together, and I was lucky to be invited to be part of that founding trustee group. He'll tell you the date, but I think it was around 2008. It could be a bit later. Wild and FFK came about around the same time. And we just kind of went from there. It was similar type of energy, right? We're all working in different financial institutions. All of them had budgets. We had a really strong purpose behind it to coalesce futures markets, giving energy and charitable inclinations into something quite meaningful. And so we selected 3 charities to start and really worked with them. For them over the years, they got significant amounts of money. One ended up being part of the Prince's Trust, and we would often get chances to go and visit the charities in action, see them in action, and support them in other ways other than financially. And the events that built up around it, of course, some of them now are still going to this day. FIA runs the gala dinner on behalf of Futures for Kids, which is brilliant. And we have the fun run and the poker night and the quiz night. Again, that's another thing I'd love to do down in the Southern Hemisphere too, but it's just haven't been able to get everyone together and coalesce. But certainly I know the fund's coming globally, right? Strong support from the FIA has been amazing. And yeah, we're really grateful to Bill for doing that, actually. He was in a really big job at the time and set off on this task to set up a new trust in the UK at a time when trusts were highly scrutinised, charitable trusts. because some had been mismanaged in other ways. Do the hard work in getting people behind it across the board. It was no easy task.